What up, everybody? It's Friday morning, and we are with a group of educators that are about to blow your mind. And we have a doctor in the house. Dr. Erin Anderson is here, and she's going to rock this thing. Laura, Amber, Sarah, Erin are all here, and we are so excited. In Austin ISD, that's in Texas, if you're wondering. You may recognize it as Austin, Texas. They're doing some pretty incredible things, and we're excited to hear and learn from them. So with that, we're going to hand it over to my friend, Dr. Erin, and to the rest of the team to teach us and drop some knowledge. Doctor, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Bown-Anderson. I am the Executive Director of Academics and Blended Learning here in Austin, Texas at Austin ISD. And I have the amazing pleasure of introducing to you some incredible people, technology design coaches who are changing the world in Austin ISD with their wisdom and their leadership. So I have with me Amber Reinhardt and Laura Browder and Sarah Dilley. And they have not only been leaders using Canvas, but they're leaders in blended and personalized learning. And so the story that we'd like to tell today and just share with you, we had a fun time yesterday sort of piecing together. This is a pretty cool story about how we have grown as a district from using Canvas 5 years ago, I think. We began using it. We had some campuses that used the free version for a while and actually officially created a district partnership about 5 years ago where we went district-wide and have learned a lot of things along the way about how Canvas has supported us in our journey in blended and personalized learning as a district, but then also how incredibly important it's been as we've moved, in the spring with emergency remote teaching, with our COVID response, and then looking forward into the future with reopening, which I'm sure many of you are in that same boat and trying to process through that, all of the challenges that are existing there. So if you don't mind, I would love to share my screen. I'm going to let me know, Mark, if that is what am I doing? If that's working.
It's working.
Great. So again, we're from Austin ISD, and we want to share with you sort of the long-term and the short-term strategy. This really crazy, very messy slide is sort of our objectives for our conversation today. So we want to share with you sort of these multiple things that are happening. So if you start at the bottom of that blue arc, we want to share with you about a program called Leadership Pathways. Sarah, Amber, and Laura have been amazing architects behind this incredible professional learning strategy. You can see that blended learning or blended and personalized learning is one of the leadership pathways in Austin ISD. And it is meant to build capacity with some leaders. There are about 100 per cohort, but it's a 2-year program. And so the teachers in Leadership Pathways then become leaders in their campuses. They were leaders before, let's be real, but they, by engaging in this conversation, have been really going deep with their knowledge about personalized learning and with Canvas, with some of the best Sherpas around. So that's one strategy. And we are going to talk to you a little bit about Leadership Pathways and why we feel like that is so crucial to our Canvas journey. And then how learning with those teachers, our influence was great, learning from them and their practice to identify what we call high leverage personalization strategies and sort of expanding our reach with personalized learning and Canvas. So that increased Canvas usage in how do we design really amazing professional learning for our staff and teachers. And that means modeling what we believe. So we are constantly challenged about how can Canvas help us realize things like positive and purposeful interaction, authentic choice, meaningful feedback, using data inform what happens next, student goal setting, and student metacognition. So that was a challenge we gave ourselves to how can we marry the use of Canvas and the use and realization of those strategies in one experience through all of our professional learning. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, our sort of short-term strategy that has emerged in the last couple of months, weeks, is moving towards creating blueprint courses. So as you may or may not know, the use of blueprinted courses in Canvas is something that we had always used more for the settings, right? To help set some settings that we knew would be important. But as we are moving into the fall, we really were like, we need to start thinking about how we can use blueprinted content to support our teachers who are on multiple points in their journey to be supported in utilizing Canvas in their own classroom, because that is what is sort of charged for everyone in our district now. So now we're really scaling up that impact of Canvas and how that's showing up in our district. So those three things really guide us around this theory of change that we have that's captured in the corner around removing barriers to access and mastery to create.
Hey, Aaron.
Yeah.
I'm jumping in awkwardly, as I promised you I would do. So I'm interested, as you know, a lot of schools right now are in kind of DEFCON 4 or 5 mode, trying to get the kids back up and running and making sure courses are designed. And I am such a huge fan of blueprints because it's a great way to be able to enable your teachers without them having to freak out about, well, how, do I have to start from scratch? Maybe
Right.
Give just a quick 30,000 foot view of what is blueprints and what have you guys done with it specifically?
So we will share more about that. We've got some slides to actually give you a little insight into what one of those blueprint courses looks like. But the idea is that at least for us at the district level, we had some guidelines. We called it creating a master template, for lack of a better word. We created some master templates that then different grade levels and courses then took that master template and added content, added interaction that we could then, using our student information system, push out to all the teachers that teach that grade level or course. And the way we set it up was that we wanted to be able to push that out, and we wanted teachers to have the autonomy to personalize the content and customize it for their individual classes. So there's still a lot of freedom in there, but what we were trying to do is to create an equitable floor for everyone in our district to have a starting place. And then as we have additional content that's built, because we've now created that link between district and campus, we can actually push out additional units of study that the teachers can then look and decide to publish or customize.
So awesome. So everyone who's listening, and we have a good sized group on here already. They must be coming because they knew a doctor was on. Dr. Aaron, I think that's what it is. Learn from this group wherever you're at in the nation, in the world. I know we have people who are usually on here from all over. I see so many teachers on social media today who are feeling like, oh, they just gave me a training and it was 3 hours and I don't even know where to start. Like the Austin ISD team has done an incredible job at enabling their teachers so that they have a good baseline of where to start. And then they have a good opportunity to go and personalize if they want to. But holy cow, if one thing, and there'll be a lot more than one, but one big thing you can learn here is help those teachers who are struggling out.
Yeah. Okay,
I'll stop. Go ahead.
So I'm going to kick over to Sarah. Sorry, Sarah. And we'll kind of we'll do a quick tour between how that leadership pathways approach has impacted professional learning, which has impacted blueprint courses. Sarah?
Yeah. So Laura, Amber, and I are lucky enough to work with amazing teachers throughout the district on a program called Leadership Pathways. And we are one of 5 in the district. Blended learning is one, and you saw on the other screen some other ones: SEL, PBL, literacy, advanced academics, and cultural proficiency and inclusion are all choices that teachers can make. And we were lucky enough, Aaron, if you want to advance to the next slide, to begin this 2-year process with teachers at the same time the district bought Canvas for the entire district. So Leadership Pathways is this program that allows teachers to opt in to a 2-year learning process In that commitment, there are 4 micro-credentials, 1 each semester over 2 years. And the aim of these micro-credentials is to have the teachers learn in such a way that they're guided towards these district priorities in a way that fits their classroom. So they are implementing as they learn. They're teaching us so much as we learn alongside them. And this program was really beneficial for the entire district in growing teacher leaders that allowed us to really build into these strategies that helped us shift to remote learning when COVID-19 shut everything down. So this big program, and then you could go to the next slide, Erin. This program started in fall of 2017. And basically we decided at that time that we weren't going to use it just to talk about Canvas or just to talk about the pedagogy, but we were going to marry the two and really thinking about how can we put students at the center of all of our professional learning. Our first micro-credential begins with empathizing with students and having teachers think about the student experience and what they can learn from their own students, just like we learn so much from these leadership pathways students. And over the course of these 2 years, teachers grow from just learning in the first micro-credential, the basics of what is blended learning and how does Canvas fit into that, to the second micro-credential where we begin to think about student voice and choice and how that layers in. And then in the third micro-credential, we dive more deeply into that and thinking about data and personalizing. And then the last one, which is really cool, is blended learning leadership, where those teachers then take a leadership role on their campuses and in the district to teach others and to spread this work in a pretty organic way, since they have learned so much through their own classroom implementation. So the next couple slides show just an insight into our course. This is the very first page of the first module that teachers work through. And as I said, it's grounded in this empathizing with students. So you'll notice that on this very first page, there's nothing really about Canvas itself, but the whole time we're thinking about what do we model for our teachers that we would want them to do, right? So if we begin with empathizing with students, hopefully they will as well. So we set up our modules. The next screen is a module view of that same course. At the end of each module, they're sort of planning for their own implementation. So they're taking their own knowledge, their own learning, and thinking about their personal context. Austin is huge. Every school is different. Every teacher's class is really different. And so we don't have a one-size-fits-all approach at all. And then the next one shows you just a screenshot of our third micro-credential where we're digging deeper. We've used a lot of the conferences as a tool in Canvas to connect. Before we even had to do this remote learning, we used that to connect virtually with participants, and always are thinking about what we can model for teachers. So the next part, we're going to talk about like what are our big takeaways from having run this program for, I think this is our 4th year now, I guess. And I can't even remember. But we also wanted to really emphasize that this was not from the beginning about online learning. And I think we had a lot of teachers who came in at the beginning thinking that we were going to just really teach them how to use Canvas or other tech tools. They wanted that like Techapalooza feel, like throw all the tech tools at them and they could decide what to use. But they learned pretty quickly that that's not what our learning was about. So we really realized that modeling best practice, both in our design in Canvas and in our face-to-face learning experiences, was key to having teachers know how to go back to their own classrooms and do that same thing. So we were really cognizant of when we were using technology and when we weren't using technology, pointing that out, how we were using Canvas to archive some of the face-to-face activities so that they could go back later. Lots of things we were trying to model choice and formative feedback so that when teachers went to implement in their own classroom, they had kind of experienced it as a student first. So our next key takeaway, go ahead, Amber.
Yeah, I can talk about this one. So one of the things that happens in these leadership pathways is that it's kind of like a national board certification process where teachers learn, they integrate that learning, they implement, a blended learning experience, or maybe their changes, the shifts that they're making in their teaching might happen throughout the whole semester, but they submit work to us with student artifacts and showing how things changed in the classroom because of what they implemented from the learning and the micro-credentials for the pathway. And so what we've noticed is a big key takeaway is to have a clear vision of mastery, right? What does it mean to provide blended and personalized learning experiences to students? And so we had a scoring rubric to start that we thought was okay, and realized quickly that I think our scoring rubric has changed every time we've implemented one of the micro-credentials. And we have now, did we just graduate our third cohort? Or so what we're really realizing is that we're learning more by working with these teachers. And Sarah spoke to this a little bit, but I think it's really important to contextualize just how diverse these teachers' classrooms are. We have everything from pre-K through all the way up through advanced placement 12th grade courses, and everything in between. So what mastery looks like isn't necessarily what your blend module looks like, right? Because that varies drastically because of developmentally appropriate learning and design and things like that. So as we learned alongside our teachers, our own scoring rubric had to change. And this idea of defining a clear vision of mastery is a practice that has also influenced the learning that teachers engage in as well. So what's really been helpful is that this is a key way that teachers can personalize their own learning and the implementation that they do in their classrooms while still meeting the expectations of the leadership pathway and the rubric.
Yeah, and Amber said it, and we probably didn't say it before, but if we slip up and say blend, it's because our instance of Canvas is called blend. And so it's our, what we've kind of branded. So if we slip up, we are so used to saying blend with our teachers, and then switching over to Canvas can be a little bit tricky for us sometimes. So just a little bit of grace there as we hear that, and you'll see some of the branding and some of our images and courses in a little bit. So Erin mentioned earlier the high leverage personalization strategies. And what we found as we continued to learn a ton from our teachers was that when they were engaging in this deep ongoing learning and implementing with their students, that a number of high leverage strategies started to kind of rise to the top. And we started to hear from them, this is having the most impact on my students and my practice. And so you'll see here the 5-year-old in the background. Sorry about that, guys. It happens. Working from home. It's good stuff. And so what we found is that those strategies that teachers and students started to really tell us was having a huge impact on their practice and their experience in school, those started to kind of drive our work forward. And you can see there's a small image down there on the screen that part of the micro-credential 4 was having teachers share their learning really publicly. And so you'll see this is a great public event that we had in our district performing arts center, where teachers actually have banners created that told their story of learning and their students and other stakeholders' stories of learning and impact over the course of the 2 years. And so those strategies they selected and presented on those in those posters. And there are videos from our students and videos from their parents and their administrators and other colleagues of how the work is kind of impacting and how that capacity is building. And so those high leverage strategies that we've heard from teachers and heard from students really started to drive our work as a team forward into kind of where we are now and our next steps with putting it together. And so, on Erin's ARC image that she showed earlier, we saw how we were starting with these kind of core group of teachers building capacity and then trying to figure out how to scale with where teachers are. And so that experience of those personalized learning within leadership pathways has led to us of like, how do we take some of these pieces and build them out into larger professional learning opportunities around Canvas, around pedagogy, around the high leverage strategies for more of our teachers, right? And so this is just an example of where we found the need for professional learning over the scope of this past summer, right? Of what we heard from teachers, of what they needed based on their experiences. And so we started with everything from, you'll notice there's a foundational technology skills down there that we still had some teachers who needed to know, how do I use Chrome? how do I use different functions of my computer, right? And then we had, you'll notice there's the blend, right? Blend for beginners. We had people who needed those basic kind of Canvas how-tos, right? And so providing an opportunity for them to come to a really, brave space to learn those basics and start to build their knowledge. And then how did we also provide experiences for some of our rock star teachers out there who had the basics down and wanted to dig more deeply into the pedagogy and designing for those learning experiences. So that's where some self-directed design time with coaching support came in. And then we also designed some really cool experiences around those high leverage personalization strategies. And we put those into a series. And so on the next slide, I do want to go ahead and pull up this course because as you're all Canvas users, you might be wondering, like, what does that course actually look like? And in that course, we were able to design, and I'm actually going to pull it up now. And so see if I can pull that up now. And this is a new for us, right? But if I can pull that up now and actually kind of walk you through the course and what we learned about it, right? And so we kind of used a gamified theme of it, but looking at the opportunity to think about modeling for more teachers, asynchronous and synchronous work, and putting it all into kind of one course. So you can see here, teachers had the opportunities to think about the series in 2-hour chunks. And so, or 3-hour chunks, and engage in the learning. And with that, we were able to model a lot of practices for teachers that they'd be able to then take back and try out in their own classroom experiences. So we can see they did some pre-work, also looking at how we could put some screencast and some really accessible kind of overviews in there as well. And then also adding in metacognition into the different pieces with some pauses. And then I'll take you over here into the module view of the professional learning course so you can see kind of the scope of all of that work that went together and how teachers were able to engage in synchronous learning. And I know people are probably sick of hearing the words synchronous and asynchronous now, but engage in some live learning together that was very collaborative in nature. And then also engaging in some really personalized learning experiences where they were driving what they wanted to learn about and what they wanted to spend their time kind of developing as they were going deeper into these different high leverage strategies that were really helping us put together what it was going to look like or might look like inside of a classroom.
So Laura, fantastic. I'm again, Aaron's thinking, wow, that Mark guy, he is awkward. I'm sorry, here I am. So Laura, so many of the people that are joining, I'm sure, are just wondering, how could I get to this level? What are some of the key things with this specific course that you think any teacher ought to be thinking about? What's the way that you've structured it? Anything that you've done specifically that you think others should know?
I think, and I'm going to say this and others please jump in, but I think one of the things that we are learning is that modeling piece for teachers of what it might look like. And that modeling piece for teachers is simple things about like navigation, right? We're thinking about, I'm in teacher view right now, but thinking about like hiding different navigation pieces, right? For that, and thinking about how am I putting things accessible, like really clear and explicit directions for the learning experiences for teachers on the page and with the content, right? Also thinking about with regards to how are we designing for choice in mind, so that not everyone is getting the exact same learning experience, but they're able to really think about what it is that they want to learn and what it is that they want to experience as a learner. And so just being really cognizant of that, and then thinking about that we also have multiple levels, right? And we design for our elementary teachers and our secondary teachers in this one course so that they have the opportunity to learn from and with one another, because we've also experienced a lot of times that the power of that vertical piece is really great. And I think sometimes we get siloed into our grade levels and we miss that opportunity to learn from others. But I'm going to stop talking and let the others pop in and share. And if they have anything else in this course they want me to kind of pull up, let me know.
I would just add that, these were sessions we were planning to provide over the summer before COVID-19 changed our landscape. So it was I think, a great task for our team to wrap our head around. How do we take what we were planning to be face-to-face experiences and have them fully online and still bring out that connection and the ability for teachers to communicate authentically? That was a big part of how this whole course was designed. And I also would just like to say that I think having those high leverage strategies identified, it didn't really matter which high leverage strategy session a teacher attended. They were going to see evidence of all of those in every single module and every single section. So even if I only went to metacognition or meaningful feedback, I was still going to get to see modeled for me how to establish some positive and productive relationships, how to maybe utilize some goal setting to identify my learning goal for the session and things like that. So just being really intentional about capturing that on the page, even if we never spoke to it directly in each session.
And I would add to thinking about two things. One, the power of video within Canvas. You can record right onto the page your directions, your greeting to the students. And I think especially in this current time, teachers, even I don't love seeing myself on video either, but kids love that. Students love seeing and that connection piece. So I would definitely recommend using the video tool. We have that on the beginning of each of our modules, and teachers, I think, appreciated having that really clear overview of what they were going to do. And the other thing is how we use our asynchronous and synchronous time, thinking about the power of Canvas to house so much learning. If you can do it so that it's, using that maybe flipped model where students, depending on age appropriateness, right, are learning before and then using your live time to connect, because students really want to connect with peers at this point. So how can you use the model in Canvas to do some pre-learning, to set it up so students are exposed to the lesson ahead of time so that when they come to your live class, they can have opportunities for true connection with their peers and with you as a teacher.
Awesome. Anything else on this course, or do we want to hand back to Erin?
I'm going to hand it back to Erin so we can talk about our next piece.
All right, so to continue on, so now this is where our brains have been lately, I'm sure yours as well, with the reopening plan. So I'm gonna kind of touch through a couple of things that have helped guide us, but then we'll tour some of how did all of those puzzle pieces then add up to and influence what we did with the blueprint courses. So we knew in the first 3 weeks, we definitely knew we were going to be engaging in remote teaching and learning. And in Austin, we are remote for the first 4 weeks for sure. So that is what we're planning toward. We know we want to build relationship and with all of our students and families, develop routines, help the children get comfortable with their hardware and their software and the platforms, and then get familiar with those tech tools. So you'll notice that we have been talking about those high leverage personalization strategies, and they live here kind of in what we call these are remote learning stances, but really they have been, they're just good learning stances, but they've been really helpful as we're thinking about how do we want all of this to come together in one place. We know we want to be whole child, whole family. We know we need to focus on digital competency and safety. We know we need to have a way to have equitable access to high quality curriculum, equitable access to online learning, equitable access to personalized instruction, and equitable access to authentic feedback and assessment. So that really helped to guide some of the principles along with the ones that you just heard about to get us to the blueprint courses. This was some teacher feedback about when they were making some sense of those learning stances, what stood out to them. And we just thought that was kind of cool. So then the challenge came that how could we use Canvas to help us achieve this or meet this challenge? We knew we needed content that was aligned to our curriculum that had been redesigned and compacted, I guess is a term, but identified some essential standards. And we knew that it was going to be built using a common template, and we knew we wanted it to be customizable for teachers. We have grades and course bands for all of the things you see here. I would say, what did Shane say? That there were 130 courses published when this was all said and done. And it's not said and done, but the first, at least round. The timeline, we had, we wanted the first 3 weeks, this was our goal, the first 3 weeks of content to be pushed by the 18th. And then teachers could customize between then and the 8th, which is when our first day of school is. And so weeks 4 through 6, we have plans for pushing that further on down the line a little bit on the 17th, I believe. But what's included in that is a process of tuning with teachers and tuning with one another to make sure that we're learning from the field about what's working and what isn't. Then we have this crazy graphic that was used internally to explain what we were going to do. So I actually threw this in because it sort of anchors a moment in time for us, where we had developed, at this point when we were talking with the team, we had developed a master template. And this master template was primary. There were actually 4 or 5 of them, but basically a primary template, 3, 5, middle school, high school, and dual language. And so once those were created, and that took a lot of time, we knew that was the time where we needed to invest as much time as we possibly could to get that right, so that when content and grade level folks took those templates and then married the curriculum and started to bring in actual instructional activities, that we would create the most solid blueprints that we could in that short time. And it was a short time. So teams worked their tails off for 2 to 3 weeks and to get them vetted and tuned so that they could be pushed. And this ended up moving out because our district pushed out when we were going to reopen. So you can see that the plan is then that now the teachers have it and they are currently customizing. And we have a survey that is going out today, our first one. We have a series of surveys to send to the teachers to give us some feedback about what's working, what's not. We truly believe that the creativity that's going to come out of teachers engaging in this process is going to influence and help the courses continue to be better. And then the teachers continue building as we go. So that was sort of a long-term plan. And so what we wanted to do with you is to give you a little bit of a closer look. This just screenshot is a screenshot of a 5th grade dual language course that brings together a lot of the elements that you see. So this is actually taking a master template, and now we've got 5th grade dual language layered on top. And we're going to explore a course here in a little bit, but wanted to just sort of have that as an anchor. And then again, when you see those high leverage personalization strategies come out, it's like, how do you make that actually happen? What does that look like? So we tried to deconstruct a little bit what the master template was doing. And so in elementary, there is a sequence and a cadence to how the lessons unfold. That there's an engage your brain, an explore mini lesson, explain, task, and share, opportunity for small group, and evaluation, reflection, exit ticket. Middle school and high school have similar patterns, so that we could see that across the district, there is sort of this ebb and flow based on best practices around lesson design, but that also had opportunities to elevate those high leverage personalization strategies. So you see this one, I believe, is a 7th grade math.
Yes.
7th grade math module. And this is a 4th grade math module. And our team is in love with emojis. So, we're capturing that there, but the kids like them too. And then again, when you go deeper into the module, we have things like greetings. If we say we are all about whole child, whole family, and building relationships, we had a responsibility to make sure that those showed up in our blueprints. So we have all different kinds of greetings sort of sprinkled throughout. And this is just sort of an anchor for me to remember that. So this is an example of kindergarten. And we were really clear about making your learning goals really clear, and then linking out to things like Seesaw. And we are a Seesaw district from pre-K to 2, but blend, we we talk about Canvas as our front door. Canvas is the front door to our learning environment. And once you get in the front door, there's all different kinds of things that you can engage with in the learning environment, and Seesaw is one of those. So kindergarten has some activities ready to go that are pre-linked in the courses. And then this is a 12th grade psychology greeting. But you would experience that as a student, that you have some way to connect with the content and connect with one another before diving in. So now I'm going to kick it over to Amber, who's going to give us a little bit of a blueprint tour.
Yeah, so thanks, Erin. And what I did is captured some screenshots. We've got the 7th grade math, general ed template, and then the dual language counterpart. And so you can see there just kind of showing really how much thought and work went into the development of this content. And so these modules really do follow that template structure. There was a big ask from our community, specifically parents and caregivers, that if I have a student in, elementary, maybe a 7th or 8th grader, and then someone in high school, they're just like, guys, teachers are doing this all so differently at different skill levels. It's not consistent, and it's really difficult to support my child's at-home learning. And so this was a promise we made to our community, that regardless of what grade level or course content the Canvas course is, that parents would see some very similar things happening in the arc of the learning for every student. And so I just captured the module view there. And Erin, if you'll hit next. Every page or every module starts with a do not publish. This is for the teachers. It's kind of the lesson plan with that screencast there, talking teachers through exactly what's going to happen in that lesson. It's not a live link there, but that week 3 teacher rationale is kind of the lesson plan that teachers can have access to as well. And so that's the same in both the Gen Ed and dual language course. And then we get to kind of the students. This is the home page, if you will, for this lesson or this week's of learning experience. And so what I don't have in the screenshot, because I couldn't fit it, is links at the bottom of this to all the different sections, portions, movements within the lesson, and each page directs them back here. So teachers then have the flexibility to customize this based on how their campus is allocating minutes and synchronous and asynchronous learning opportunities for students to kind of make that work for their individual needs and for the needs of their students. If you'll hit next, Erin. So there's the welcoming routine, again, both in English and Spanish, with an opportunity to engage with each other and some of the content. And that is a discussion post at the bottom. And if you'll go ahead and hit next. The Engage Your Brain really asks students to think about the learning goals and success criteria of the lesson, to really that clear vision of mastery again that we were talking about. When students have that, it's gonna make the learning more transparent to them and allow for metacognition embedded throughout these as well, which we'll see as we continue. And so the what am I thinking is a really good example of that. So right after engaging with what the learning goals and success criteria are, they get a chance to think about their thinking and make some connections to the learning for the content of that week. So then we get into the Explore lesson. Again, the learning goal and success criteria is right there. We are trying to use PlayPosit as often as possible. And in my teacher view, it just kind of comes up as a gray box. So just knowing that, there are different video tools out there that give a lot of real-time data to students. That's something that was really important to us. In this remote learning context, is that we automate some of that feedback from the teachers so that kids are getting it in real time. And so we're trying to think of our kind of suite of technology tools in terms of how would I, as a learner or as a caregiver monitoring my child at home, how am I going to know what I know and how I'm doing towards those learning goals and success criteria. So if you'll go ahead and hit next, Erin, and that's going to inform my metacognitive pause, and then my ability to take some next steps as a learner. And this is where that choice comes in really importantly. So before they see their opportunities, they're already thinking about that mini lesson and where they are in their learning and what's making sense and what isn't, with some prompts there on the page. And so now we get to the next steps. And this is where they really do get to choose their adventure, right, based on their own sense of their progress towards those learning goals. And moving on, then this really intentional moment to stop and think, what have I learned? And that is something that is consistent throughout every grade band of these blueprint courses and the lesson templates within them. So now every course also has some options of students to learn with peers. So they've engaged in maybe that asynchronous independent practice, and now they're going to share their thinking with peers so that they can co-construct some knowledge and share with each other. And then the next step is, and this is also, oh, sorry, I guess I didn't have it for this one, but then there's also an assignment that can be submitted only to the teacher. And so not every lesson module has both of those. And we also encourage teachers to kind of pick and choose. It may not make sense to have both of those assignments in every one. But this is where the students get to evaluate not only their own learning and self-assess and reflect about how it went for them, but to provide their teachers some input and feedback about how remote learning is going and about how that specific lesson went. So that evaluate really is for the learner to evaluate the learning, not for the teacher to evaluate student progress. At that point, they've had other opportunities to do that. And that's kind of the whirlwind blueprint tour of a 7th grade math course.
Yay. So we knew that was a lot to take in, and having that sort of appear on your Canvas dashboard was going to require some orienting to what that process is going to be like. And so one of the things that we were also charged with as we're developing the courses and trying to get that content ready and the logistics behind turning them into blueprints and sending them out, we knew we needed to provide some professional learning, both face-to-face through Zoom, but also a standalone course. So of course we used Canvas also to help be a place where teachers continually go back to say, what was I supposed to do with this again? And so I'm going to kick it over to Laura to talk to us a little bit about this course, which was the course intended to help our staff make sense of these courses that are now arriving in their dashboard, and what do they do with them. So I don't know if you want to share, Laura.
Yeah. And believe it or not, even with all the professional learning that we've done, we still have teachers who are saying, this is a lot, right? And this is a lot to kind of think about and process through. And so this course right here came about with thinking about what teachers would need to kind of think about and know about the creation of these blueprints, so that they could then make really, really thoughtful decisions about what to customize. And so in this course, and in this course in particular, and I'll pop over to screen share now. Okay, and with this course in particular, wanted to think about what teachers needed to be really thoughtful about in their sharing and in their customizing, excuse me. And with that, we came up with kind of 2 documents that would drive teachers to think about that customization process. And this course is completely asynchronous, so they could keep going back to it as much as they needed to, and you can still see, kind of our design and modeling, like what it is that we wanted them to be able to do. And inside of it, the 2 pieces that I think are important for us to highlight, that we keep kind of going back to as we are having a lot of conversations with teachers about the customization process of, yes, talking about asynchronous versus synchronous overview and what you're doing and making those really thoughtful decisions about what you're doing when, but then kind of thinking through a recipe for customization. So how do you make decisions about what it is that you should customize, and what decisions you would want to make about why you're customizing and what that looks like. So this document was a brain trust of so many, of putting together a little bit of kind of the why of the blueprints, but then also some of that feedback that we heard really clear from our stakeholders, that we needed the lessons to be consistent for students and families across the board, really clear about how the class is organized, clear about what students are supposed to do each day, clear learning goals, that students had opportunities to engage in engagement, reflection, progress monitoring, getting feedback every day, right? Choice and scaffolding is in there. But then the teachers also felt empowered to add their flair, and add everything that they've learned about Canvas and about design to make the content that their own, without compromising any of these structures that have been really thoughtfully kind of put out there, similar to kind of what Amber talked about as she was kind of walking through. So put together some notes and questions for them to consider about what they would want to think through in that customization process. And so hopefully this is going to be a really important document right now for teachers as they're engaging in customization, and also knowing that in that blueprint process, there are also really small things that teachers are needed to think through. So on top of this kind of recipe for customization, which is kind of that bigger picture about what decisions to make, it also came to a checklist. And what are the things that in my blueprint I kind of have to do in order to make the blueprints work for my students? And so having these two documents together has been a support for our teachers to then think through, and it's a little slow loading, sorry about that, think through what are the decisions that they would have to do in the customization process, and then what are kind of the non-negotiables that they would have to customize based on the way that the blueprints come over into their course and what that might look like. Anything else I missed on those two that might be important to kind of think through or talk through?
I think you hit it, Laura. It was this trying to make it as simple as possible, knowing that it's a fairly complex process. But this really kind of hopefully took you on a bit of that journey from starting out with learning from our Leadership Pathways experience, exploring professional learning on that wider scale, and then really bringing all of those pieces together in the blueprint courses has been really, really an interesting journey for us in Austin ISD. And we'd love to take any questions that you might have or feedback, or we're open.
Mark, you didn't awkwardly interrupt as much as you told us you were going to. I'm a little disappointed there.
Well, I just sat here awkwardly, so it was close. I do think my big concern here, Aaron, is that I'm afraid your team and yourself are going to be getting more and more calls about, hey, can you help me? Or hey, could you build this for me? Or hey, would you like to work for me? Anyone listening, if you try and steal anyone from Aaron's team or Aaron, the Austin ISD team will call me and be extremely mad. So don't do it. They're not available. Great comment here from Laura on Facebook. Definitely see some things I'll be adding to our template. Let's talk for a second, and I'm going to pick on Aaron very, very first. Aaron, so many people right now are getting up and running.
Yeah.
And so many are overwhelmed. Not every district has the brain trust that exists right now, and I'm taking myself out of that brain trust, don't worry. And I have the four of you. I think people could have joined this live stream and would have been like, wow, I wish I would have had those resources. Where does someone start? If they're kicking off a Canvas instance in this new blended learning model, where would you tell people they ought to kick off?
We could go back a couple of years and ask ourselves the same question. And I think the first thing I would say is, don't forget everything that you knew about yourself as a teacher and about good teaching. Number one, that is the foundation upon which it's all built. So I remember some of our very first exercises with ourselves and with teachers was list out what is it that you do in a classroom every day, and then look at where are the opportunities to, you're never going to perfectly replicate it, but how could you have that experience maybe enhanced in an online way? And what is your own sequence for teaching and learning, and then use that as a guide to make decisions. So when I think about looking at our blueprints, what at least made me breathe, right, is that there's a familiarity to, oh, that's just good teaching and learning right there, right? And yes, there are some moves that are totally different that you have to make because it's remote. But as long as our teachers are professionals. They went through their own professional learning to get to this point, and to not just throw that out because this is a new place that everybody, including in Austin ISD, is starting at a different point on their journey. We have teachers who, for whatever reason, hadn't begun their Canvas journey at all until the spring, or maybe not even in the spring. And so they're feeling that same sense of, oh my goodness, and the blueprints can feel extremely overwhelming. And then there are some that are like, these are amazing, and I think I can do it better. And right, so you've got every bit of that spectrum. But if I were just starting out, I would go internal for a little bit and ask myself what is the kind of experience that I want to create and build, and work from there.
Thoughts from anybody else on that very same question?
I always think too, so my sister-in-law works in a district that just is starting with Canvas, and so I've been talking with her about this a lot, and I think we always say too, to start small, right? Like, get good at one thing at a time. So don't feel like you have to learn everything. Canvas can do so much, and I think if you get good at one thing at a time, and the other key is asking your students for feedback, right? What's working? Can you find the resources that you need? What did you enjoy? So those two things, be open to feedback from your students and start small. Don't put pressure on yourself to learn everything, but get good at discussions first and use those, and then get good at quizzes later, right? So don't feel like you have to do everything at once.
Love it. Okay, let's keep going. I've got more awkward questions for you. Don't worry. So Lorraine, I couldn't agree more. Lorraine just says, sounds like a great, thoughtful approach. I love the balance you struck between creating blueprints and giving teachers room to personalize the courses and show their flair. Love it. How, my friends, Sarah, Laura, Amber, and Aaron, when you guys are helping and giving feedback and course design ideas to K through 12, right? How do you differ that approach when you're looking at a kindergarten, an elementary, a secondary, whatever else? What are the thought processes that you go through as you think about design?
Can you clarify, do you mean as we design the blueprints or as we help a teacher design?
Both.
Well, I think for the blueprint course design, we involved teachers in that process. So there were teachers writing curriculum over the summer, and they had the lived experience. You know, we didn't ask people to write curriculum who hadn't been in Canvas using what we call Blend already. So they had a bit of that know-how and expertise, and then worked alongside our curriculum folks to develop that content as well. And then when we're working with teachers, I think one thing that kind of ties together some of what Aaron and Sarah just spoke about too is, you know, there's all the mechanics of Canvas and how to make it work and how to do that. But then there's our pedagogy and our teaching practice. And so when a teacher can identify that goal of what they want or what they dream of for their students and that learning, then that's where we find the answer to what to get good at first, right? And I think that's the approach. I mean, we are coaches, that's in our job title. And so it's never about going to a teacher and telling them what they need to do or should do or must do. It's about what do you want to do? And then how can I help you make that happen? So that's always our approach. Right now it's with PLCs and grade bands though, because we don't have enough capacity to coach individual teachers in this reality.
I can only imagine. So I'm going to comment really quick. I don't know if you guys do anything in the comments, if you've posted any of your templates or anything, but Laura is asking here, you know, basically, wouldn't it be cool if multiple institutions could share their templates? So Laura, if you are not using the Canvas Commons, you need to go check it out. It's part of the community. Go to community.canvaslms.com. More than 1 million people, educators, are in that platform sharing ideas. There's a place called the Canvas Commons in there where you can share templates. And people have just said, yeah, I created this and it was a labor of love, and go use it. And there are tons and tons of templates. So there is a way. You're welcome. Anything else? Aaron, let's put a big bow on this. It's been fantastic. Austin ISD, they're kind of at the pinnacle of doing awesome stuff. No, Sarah, Aaron, Laura, and Amber are not available. They are stuck in Austin ISD, and Aaron will send hate mail to my house if they get any calls. So be clear,
Right.
Not available. Aaron, put a bow on this for me.
All right. Well, I just thank you everyone for giving us the opportunity to share and think and reflect about our own journey. And we're also always looking in the comments to learn from the bigger, wider community as well. So thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, everybody, we will be back next week. We hope you have a lovely, lovely weekend. Thanks to our friends at Austin ISD. Have a good one.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.